Hello, welcome to my video on references and citations. This video is a fairly comprehensive guide on how to properly cite and reference your sources that you use in a research paper. This is a good guide. If you're watching this because it is a replacement class, then you'll have to watch the entire video. If you're watching this only for references or to understand how to do things properly, you can skip to the various sections depending on the situation. But if you are watching this for a replacement class, it is a requirement that you watch the video in its entirety to get credit for attendance. So we're going to cover a lot of different things today. First thing we're going to do is talk about why references and citations are important. And then we're going to discuss the difference between common knowledge and specialized knowledge, difference between quoting and paraphrasing, when you should quote and when you should paraphrase, what are citations themselves and the in-text citations and a reference list. And then we're going to talk about how to do single author, two author, and multiple author citations. They all have slightly different technical twists. And then also how we are going to do single sentence and multiple sentence citations. And then I'm going to do a couple of examples with one paragraph with a couple of sources, and then I'm going to show how to use a citation generator to generate your entire reference list and all of your in-text citations. So let's get started. The first thing we're going to look at in this video is the importance of citations and references. They are used to, ultimately, the idea of a citation is references to show where your ideas, your words, your data, your facts are coming from. You want to give credit to the original author of the information that you're using. This is helpful because this helps you avoid being accused of plagiarism. Basically, anytime you're writing an academic paper and anyone reading that paper goes, well, where did this information come from? You need to provide the source of that information. If I say, how do you know this? You need to be able to say, well, I got this information from somewhere. But some of the ideas that are going to be in your paper are going to be your opinions. So we need to be able to distinguish the source of the external information and your opinion. So this is why we are going to learn how to do these citations and references. It also enhances your credibility. By providing external sources, you are making your argument stronger, and you can allow your reader to verify the information that you're presenting, to say, I know this information is true because it came from a reliable source. Here's the reliable source. That's what your citation and reference will do. And this is also a way to uphold your academic integrity, demonstrates honesty, trust, fairness, respect, responsibility, encouraging scholarship. This is basically showing that you are doing the work. Okay, so what is plagiarism? Well, the official definition is intentionally or unintentionally using ideas, images, words, or data from another source without proper credit, including AI-generated content. You should always indicate what content has been generated from AI in your academic writing. There's two different kinds of plagiarism. There's intentional plagiarism. This is basically you're buying or using somebody else's words and you're trying to say that this is work you did. Where there's also accidental plagiarism. This is due to carelessness or forgetting to note your sources, or you did it incorrectly. This is still plagiarism. Even copying your own writing from a different course without giving credit to it is still a form of plagiarism. When should you cite? Well, the general rule is you cite external sources when you are quoting someone, if you're using their exact words, and you should surround any quote, without changing any of the words, with a double quotation marks, like you see here. When you're paraphrasing ideas. So even if it's not your idea, and you've reworded it so it's in your own words, it's still not your idea. So this is where even if you're getting something from AI, it should be rephrased and it should be cited. And then summarizing somebody else's ideas. So if you take a paragraph of information, you summarize it into a short sentence or two, you have to say that this is somebody else's idea. And anytime you have facts, statistics, data, all of this is different things that need to be cited. And this is unless the information is common knowledge. And specialized knowledge. Anytime it's specialized knowledge, which basically is all of the things above, these are all specialized knowledge. Any information that is not widely known or easily verifiable. So we're going to talk about when to do it, or when in doubt, provide a citation. If you're not sure if you should or shouldn't, the safe bet is to always provide the citation. Even if you think, well, this might be common knowledge, if you're not certain, always provide the citation just to be on the safe side. So what is specialized knowledge and common knowledge? Well, common knowledge is information that most educated people know, or facts easily found in a standard source. So these are the types of things that, now what most educated people know, this can be hard to assume, but if you are doing research that everyone in your major will know, because this is very fundamental, but people outside of your major won't know, you need to consider who's going to be reading your piece of work or listening to your presentation. If it's people within your major only watching or reading your essay, then it probably would be considered common knowledge. But if it's going to be used for people who are outside of your field, then you may want to cite it because it might be specialized knowledge. So here's some examples. Water freezes at 0 degrees Celsius. Everybody knows this. You don't need a citation for this. It doesn't matter where you got that information. Barack Obama was president of the United States from 2009 to 2017. Now, you may not remember the exact years that he was president, but this is something that you can find easily with a simple internet search. It will give you that information. You do not need to provide a citation for things like this, even if you had to look it up. So that is so easy to find, and you'll be able to find it in multiple sources that will tell you that, so there's no need to provide the citation. But no matter what, you still need to write it in your own words. You need to paraphrase this information. You can't just copy it, even if it's considered common knowledge. Common knowledge does not include data, statistics from any study, or any statement that people might disagree with. A disputable statement means if somebody goes, well, I don't know if that's true, you need to provide a citation for it. Okay? So if it's specialized knowledge, you need to provide citations. These are original ideas, statistics, lesser known facts, expert opinions. These are the types of things that people might disagree with. So an example here, a 2021 study showed 60% of students prefer ebooks. So if I put this into a paper, my readers are going to be like, well, where did this information come from? So that needs to provide there needs to be a reference and citation for this. Or according to the WHO, the World Health Organization, 1 in 13 people worldwide has asthma. So even though it says according to the WHO, the World Health Organization, you still need to provide a citation and a reference so people can see that you didn't just make this up and pretend that the WHO said it. Okay? A citation is required. So if anybody ever asks, how do you know that information? It's not common knowledge. You need a citation. So a lot of students don't know when to quote and when to paraphrase. So we need to know when it's appropriate. quoting is using the exact words of someone. Usually these words are really important. The person saying it is very famous, or it's very difficult to rephrase it without losing its meaning or style. So the style means that it's just a perfect sentence. It's really well said, and if you rephrase it, it's going to lose some of that uh, that impact that it has. Otherwise, so here's an example: Shakespeare, to be or not to be, that is the question. Obviously, this is very famous. You cannot change these words because it will change the impact. This is the style that's important here. Also, Shakespeare is very famous. Okay, so use quotes sparingly. Paraphrasing shows deeper understanding of your work. In science, STEM related courses or research, quotes are used very, very rarely. The only time you would use a quote is when you are citing a code or a law that applies to your field of study. But other than that, it's very, very rare to use any quotes. Okay. Paraphrasing, use this most of the time. Almost all of your information that you're putting into a paper should be paraphrased. This is restating your ideas in your own words, making it clearer, making it shorter. You want to simplify. You're trying to communicate your ideas. So academic achievement relies primarily on students' ability to think critically. If this is the original statement, this is Smith 2022. Smith is not famous. Of course, this is a made-up example, and we always use Smith as a made-up for a lot of made-up examples. But this sentence is not so beautiful and so impactful that it can't be rephrased. And if Smith is not a super famous person in the field, it also is not important. Okay, so you can paraphrase this. Smith said that students do better in school when they can think carefully. You could even still use the word critically. Maybe sometimes you don't want to change certain words, but that basically says the same thing, and it's in your own words. That's what paraphrasing is. This shows you understand the idea and contributes to your original voice, which is what professors are looking for when you are writing academic papers. Okay? Always cite your sources for both quotes and for paraphrases. It does not matter if it's a quote, if it's a paraphrase, you need to provide your external source. Okay, so this is going to come to now, what are citations and references? So we need to understand the difference between the two and how they work together. Any proper citation will have a reference. Every reference will have a related citation. They must work together. So what are they? Well, a citation is a brief mention within the body of your text that shows where you got your information, your quotes, or your figures from. All your citation does is help you find this source in your reference list. Okay, so this is also called an in-text citation, so don't get confused. This is within the borrowed text of your writing. It helps the reader find the full source in your reference list. And the reference list is a complete list of all sources you cited in your text, in your paper, at the end of your paper. Now, this helps the reader find and check the sources you use. So the citation will help me find it in your reference list. Your reference list will help me find it from the Hanyang Library or on the internet or wherever you got this information from. That's the difference. But they must work together. If you have a citation, you must have a matching reference. If there's something listed in your reference list, there must be a citation somewhere within your paper that shows me where you used it. If they're not both there, it's done incorrectly. Okay. A bibliography is slightly different. than a reference list. A reference list only uses sources directly within your text. A bibliography might use other sources consulted, even if they're not directly listed in your text somewhere. So for academic writing, you must use a reference list. Okay. So we're going to talk about different citation styles. There's many styles that exist. APA, MLA, Chicago, Harvard, IEEE, Vancouver, they all have different uses. They are used a lot in different fields. So MLA is used commonly in humanities. APA is used in social science, education, psychology, sometimes in business. Harvard and is sometimes used in business. Again, the IEEE is used a lot in engineering and technical fields, and biomedical, but it really depends on who you are writing for. So they're different, but they're all slightly different, but they're all pretty much similar. But for this class, we're going to use APA 7 because this covers a wide variety of soft sciences, business, education. So it is a very versatile, very common way to do it. And I'll show you how to do it later in this video. So there are two types of in-text citations or citations. One is called integral. The other one is called non-integral. An integral citation is also called an author prominent citation. This is where the author of your source is part of the grammar of your sentence. Just to be clear, a source is any external information that you got, be it an academic journal, a book, a website, whatever. They are all sources, okay? We use integral citations or author prominent citations when you want to emphasize the author's contribution or perspective to your writing. This is useful when discussing theories or viewpoints specific to an author. Specifically, if it's a controversial statement, you definitely want to say this is the author who's saying it. So here's an example. Smith 2020 argues that climate change impacts are accelerating. Smith is the subject of the sentence. This is together the integral citation, right? Johnson suggests that renewable energy adoption is crucial for sustainable development. So these are what you're saying. It is important that Smith came up with this idea. It's important that Johnson came up with this idea. That's why you're using an integral citation. Author prominent citations must have a referencing verb. So Smith argues, Johnson suggests. So these different referencing verbs, and I will provide a list in the class, but there's some will show agreement, some will show doubt, some will be more neutral. So if you agree with what Smith says, you probably wouldn't use argues. You would probably use something stronger like Smith shows that climate change impacts are accelerating. So it's stronger proof, right? These two show that there's a little bit of doubt that you have about these statements. But don't worry about that right now. Non-integral citations, this is information prominent citations. The author's name appears in parentheses at the end of the sentence. Just so you know, these are parentheses, and use when you're focusing on the information or the data. So if you're paraphrasing data, usually a non-integral citation is more appropriate. The author is not the source of the actual research. So what this means is that if you are reading a newspaper article or a website article that is discussing some research that was done by the UN. You look for the UN paper, but you can't find it. So you don't want to spend hours and hours looking for this document. So instead of finding the original source, you use the newspaper that cited it. And there, your author of your document is the reporter that wrote the newspaper article, but the research was done by the UN. Therefore, you would use a non-integral citation. If there's multiple sources that basically say very similar things, then who said it isn't as important. Okay? So climate change impacts are accelerating. There may be several studies that are all saying the same thing. You don't need to cite all of them because this isn't really too surprising information, but it's also not common knowledge. So you need to provide a citation. This is how you would write this in-text citation as a non-integral citation. Notice all of this is very important. The spacing, everything. There is a space before you open the bracket. Then you put the author's family name. There's a comma, a space, the year, you close the bracket, and then the period goes outside of the citation, showing that this citation is part of this sentence. If you put the period here, and then you put Smith 2020 and start another sentence, you could be assumed that Smith 2020 is for whatever information comes in the next sentence. It is very important that you get this absolutely correct. Okay. Renewable energy adoption is crucial for sustainable development. Johnson 2019. Again, the spacing, no space inside the brackets, no space after the bracket, just put the period, but there's a space before the bracket. If there's no period, then there should be a space. Okay. So here, if you find a newspaper article written by a reporter named Kim discussing Smith's research. So there's a paper in the Korea Times, and the reporter name is Kim. Then, but talking about this study that came out that Smith had done, then you would write, Smith argues that climate change impacts are accelerating, Kim 2021. So this paper came out, or this newspaper article came out after this was published, something like that. So that's why the date is slightly different. Okay, so that is why you would use non-integral citations. So there's a difference. So a lot of times when you're using integral citations, it's for original research, and then everything else is non-integral citations. All right, we're going to move on to single author, two author, and multiple author citations. An integral example with a single author, Bark 2022, found that regular exercise improves memory. The non-integral citation, regular exercise improves memory, Bark 2022. Both parts, these do not need to be bold-faced. They're only bold-faced because they are, I'm trying to highlight them within this video, but generally speaking, you do not change the font, do not change the font size, the font style, or don't make it darker. Don't make it bold-faced, okay? Two authors gets a little bit more complicated. When it's an integral citation, you use the word and. Lee and Kim, space, open bracket, 2021, close bracket. Report that mobile apps support student language learning. The non-integral citation, if we can find several studies that say something similar, mobile apps support students' language learning, Kim and Lee. Notice it doesn't say and anymore. It's using the ampersand. It's the and symbol. This is a slight difference, but it does make a difference. Okay, so make sure that if you're using the non-integral citation, it's with the ampersand, and if it's the integral citation, you use the word and. There must be subject-verb agreement. Notice the reporting verb here is now for multiple authors. It is not Lee and Kim reports. Lee reports, Kim reports. Lee and Kim together report. So you must have the correct reporting verb. For 3 or more authors, it changes again. So here we use Latin. Et al, et alia. This is Latin for and others. So Johnson et al, there is a period. This is an abbreviation, and in space and in the year that this study was published, argue that classroom technology increases engagement. The non-integral citation is similar. Classroom technology increases engagement. Johnson et al, there's a period, then there's a comma, and they must both be there, a space, and then the year. Close the bracket, put the period. So this happens for any time there are 3 authors or more. You use the lead author's surname. Johnson is a family name. So family name followed by et al, always with the period. And then depending if it's integral or non-integral, there's no period in the integral citation, or there's no comma in the integral citation. There's a comma in the non-integral citation. Okay, and it means and others. Again, this is plural because it's multiple authors, so you must use the correct verb for plural authors. Now we need to talk about multiple sentence citations, whether you're citing one sentence. All the examples so far have been single sentences, but if you need to get 2 or 3, sometimes 3, you should keep your citations short, or your paraphrasing short, but sometimes you need to consider, you need to write 2 or 3 sentences to capture the important information. So how do we do that? So we're going to start with a confusing example. And here, artificial intelligence is rapidly changing higher education, raising questions about plagiarism, authorship, and assessment. Many universities are struggling to update their academic integrity policies. Instructors report uncertainty about whether students are using AI ethically or deceptively. So, what is confusing about this? Well, first of all, there are 3 sentences here. Which ones came from Smith? Without any extra information here, it's hard to tell. Technically, the only sentence that has a citation is the 3rd sentence. Instructors report uncertainty about whether students are using AI ethically or deceptively. These 2 sentences, the first 2 sentences, don't have any citation with them. It's not clear if this is your writing or Smith's ideas, right? So this is a very poorly cited paraphrase. So they appear to present research findings, but the source is not cited until the end of the 3rd sentence. This is done incorrectly, okay? Readers might think that some points are your own ideas. In fact, I would attribute these ideas to you, these first 2 sentences, because there is no reference to them. So how do we fix this? How do we make this clearer? Well, we are going to do it as an integral citation according to Jones, 2023. Artificial intelligence is rapidly changing higher education, raising questions about plagiarism, authorship, and assessment. Jones also states that universities continue to struggle with updating academic integrity policy. Finally, he indicates that instructors report uncertainty about students' ethical or deceptive use of AI. Here we have use of reference words. So the citation appears the first time at the first mention. So again, this is the author's family name, last name, and the year in the integral citation. This is the first sentence where you're using Jones's ideas, okay? Then any following sentences that still refer to the same research use what is called a referencing word. So Jones also states, shows that you're still attributing this information in the second sentence to this source. And then in the third sentence, you say he. Now you have to be certain that Jones is a man, because it could be a woman. But if you're certain that Jones is a man, then you put he. If you find out that it's a woman, then put she indicates. Okay. And if it's multiple authors, put they indicate that instructors, right? So this eliminates all the ambiguity. You are saying Jones wrote this idea, Jones wrote this idea. Okay, so this is how you do multiple sentence formatting. Here, another example, Smith is the author of the article, a newspaper or website, writing about research done by the United Nations World Food Program. But you can't find the original research. So you need to cite Smith. Okay, here's how you would do it. According to the UN World Food Program. So you start off by giving credit to the source, the real original source. Climate change poses significant challenges to global agriculture. Rising temperature and unpredictable weather patterns lead to reduced crop yields and increased food insecurity, resulting in an urgent need for adaptive strategies to mitigate these impacts. So Smith is the author of a newspaper article or a website that's talking about the importance of this research done by the UN World Food Program. You can't give credit because you didn't find the original source, and UN reports are notoriously difficult to find sometimes. And so sometimes you can't find it. But if Smith is arguing it and you find this, when you look for this original report, you can't find it, you can still cite Smith, but you can't say Smith did the research, because Smith did not do the research. The UN World Food Program did the research. Therefore, you have to use the non-integral citation. But because you are starting and you're giving credit here, everything after that until you get to the citation is credited to Smith under this research. Only Smith would appear in your reference list. You would not have a reference to the United Nations World Food Program because you don't have that source. Okay. This is not typically APA 7, but it does reduce ambiguity. And this situation does come up quite a bit. And so I will accept this because this, technically, you're supposed to cite it in the first time it comes up, but Smith is not the person who's done the research. So give credit to the World Food Program. That makes more sense. And then this is acceptable as a multiple sentence citation. All right, so I'm going to go into an example here. This is a leaf paragraph. This is, if you're not familiar, lead, evidence, analysis, finish. So the lead is this is a typical academic paragraph. Your lead sentence is your topic sentence. The finish is your concluding sentence. And then all of the EAs are evidence analysis. That means every time you provide evidence, you make a comment using your own words, which is your analysis. This one will have two external sources. So here's the paragraph. I'll give you a second or two to read it so we can look at it in more detail. So you've probably noticed a couple of citations. We're going to go through this. Starting off, the first sentence is the topic sentence of this paragraph. The challenges posed by artificial intelligence require urgent attention to academic integrity and higher education. The next sentence is evidence from Jones. It's reshaping higher education, raising significant concerns about plagiarism, authorship, and assessment. This is not cited as, or not written as, an integral citation because this can probably be found in multiple papers. The next sentence, Jones notes that many universities are struggling to revise their academic integrity policy. This is also evidence. So this also needs to be cited as evidence. So because you have the reference word here of Jones, then I know that you're giving credit to Jones for this from this same source. Okay. The next sentence, well, we'll skip that. We'll look at the next piece of evidence. In addition, instructors have expressed concern about their ability to discern whether students use AI use is ethical or deceptive. This comes from Lee in 2021. Again, this sentence here is a comment about this evidence. This difficulty shows how quickly technology events can outpace institutional responses, creating uncertainty for educators and students. So this is a comment about this, making this difficulty. And then this next sentence here is a comment about this evidence. So shows the complexity of maintaining academic honesty in the era of AI and highlight the urgent need for clearer guidelines and policies. So the sentences in green are attributed to external sources, and then these two sentences in blue are the author, your interpretation, your explanation of the evidence. So this is an explanation of this evidence, or what you get out of it, or why you think this evidence is important. Here, this is explaining why you think this evidence is important. Finally, you got your concluding sentence. Institutions must adapt swiftly to uphold academic integrity amid rapid technological change. Okay, so this is a very simple example. Here would be your references, Jones and Lee. We haven't really talked about reference lists yet. They must be listed by family name or surname. A lot of citation generators call it last name, which I really wish they didn't, because in Korea, your family name, your surname is your first name, right? So, but under Western formats, it is last name. So you just understand that when they use the term last name, they're talking about family name. Okay, so this is proper formatting with family name. And if you look back here, we got Jones and Lee. They are not listed in the order that they appear in your writing. They appear in alphabetical order. So we follow the English alphabet. So H-I-J-K-L. J comes before L, so this is the order that it must be in. Notice the formatting here, where Jones and Lee are on the left margin, and then the rest of the information is indented. This is called a hanging indent. It's the opposite of a normal indentation in a paragraph. In a paragraph, usually it's the first line that is indented and all the other lines are on the left margin. References are opposite. They're hanging indents so that it becomes easier to spot in a long reference list how, or the different authors by family name. Jones 2023 must appear in the text. Lee 2021 must appear in the text. Here, Jones 2023, Lee 2021. You cannot use any different name. If you use the word Jones or the name Jones and the name Lee, there must be a Jones 2023 in the reference list. There must be a Lee 2021 in the reference list. Here, Jones, now they add the initial, but Jones 2023, Lee 2021. Okay, so that is how they work. They work together. This allows me to find the name of the article that I cited, or the name of the paper that I cited. Here's the journal that I found it in. Here's the volume number, the page numbers, and then there'll be these are made up, but this is what the citation will look like with the link. So again, the name of the article, the journal that it's in, the volume and the pages. You don't need to know how to do this, because the next thing I'm going to do is show you how to use a citation generator. I'm going to use the mybib.com citation generator. There's a couple of reasons I do that. The first one is it works in both English and Korean and multiple languages. It doesn't require that you create an account, because many of them require that you create an account, so that, and then this one seems to have fewer ads, and it also produces both integral and non-integral citations. So that's what we're going to go do next. All right, so I know this is a very technical situation, or this is something it's the reason I'm going into so much detail is that so many times when I'm grading essays, the references are very poorly done, the references and citations. So I know it's very technical and requires a lot of focus, but it is important. So I'm going to go through an example with a real essay. This is an essay that was not written by a Han Young student, and I've edited it to make sure it follows the instructions that I've given you. But this is an engineering example. It's talking about water shortage, which is not a problem in Korea. This is why I've picked this topic. It's talking about desalination, which is, taking the salt out of ocean water and making it into drinkable water. So this is a typical essay, research essay. You can see there's lots and lots of different citations in here. But one of the things I want to point out here is this is what I get a lot. And I'll get a list of sources like this. And this is just a list of URLs. This is not a reference list. This is absolutely incorrect. This doesn't tell me, like this DOI number here, whose research is that? I cannot tell. So if you have an in-text citation like this within, I don't know which DOI that is. So we need to do this properly. The actual proper reference list for this essay looks like this. Notice it is, again, hanging indents. So the author's family name is on the left. It's in alphabetical order, starts with A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, right? It goes all the way down the alphabet. There are multiple author citations, 2 author citations. This one's 3 authors. This one's a single author. This one's an organization. This one's an organization. This one's multiple authors. This one's a single author. You need to be able to do all of these different styles, because it is very common to get multiple author, 2 author, single author, sometimes 0 authors, but an organization. So this is what I'm going to show you how to generate this using MyBib. All right, so I'm going to put this up side by side, the essay and my web browser with mybib.com. Again, I don't care which citation generator you use. Any one of them's fine. There's lots to use. I've explained why I use this one. There are still certain problems with it. This is what you get when you log into mybib.com. It starts with a pop-up. There are a few pop-ups doesn't really, but it's usually right at the beginning. So you can choose to, but I just generally close all these. The first thing you need to do is to choose the proper citation style. It will default to MLA 8. I don't know why, or at least it does on my computer. But if you look, there are thousands of different citation styles. So this is why we can't teach you every single citation style, because all of them have different requirements. Now, a lot of these fall into some of the bigger categories. This is APA style, American Psychology Association. But notice I've been scrolling down and we're still in A. Like, there is a ton of different citation styles. This is not something that you need to worry about until you're actually working and trying to publish. Then you would need to find, or the easiest way would be, and we finally got to B. So all of these are different A sources. Depending on which size, where you're trying to publish, you would need to choose, or who you're working for, you would need to choose the right source. But what I want you to pick is APA 7. That is the one I want you to do. So save that, and so that sets your citation style up. I also want you to choose your font. I do not want you to use Times New Roman. I usually use Arial or Calibri. I'll put it on Arial for this one. Make sure you're choosing the same font size as your text. Notice that there should be no difference between the text and the citation. Okay, so choose those two things. So now we've got an empty reference list. I'll make this resize out a little bit so it's easier to see. And let's start here with the essay. And it says, although there's more than 70% of Earth's surface is covered by water, only 2.5% is fresh water. And of this, only 1% is accessible, not locked up in ice caps. And that's a National Geographic 2021 source. So I need to go to the National Geographic 2021 source. I believe that's this one, National Geographic. And so here's that information. Okay, it's clearly it's not only 2.5% is fresh, and then there's just 1%, and then it doesn't, so this is where the information came from. This is paraphrased, but I need to provide this source. So when you're providing a source, copy the URL and then go back to my bib, add a new citation. Now so here's where you get your pop-ups. So I'm going to close that one. You can choose website, book, journal, video. This is a website. So it says enter or paste your URL. So I do that. I search. It provides, or it comes up with, this is where what its searches come up with. This is what they found. Okay, sometimes you'll get multiple options, but generally speaking, when you use a URL, it's pretty accurate and finds it immediately. Another nice thing about this is it basically will tell you if something you need to use caution. It might not be credible. A lot of them will say probably credible, and this is usually when they can't find authors and things like that. So go ahead and click on that list. Now it says web page author. So we need to go back and check this web page to see if there's an author. This is a photograph, but that's not the author. So if you look through this, I don't believe there is an author for this. Yeah, there's no author in this. Usually the author's at the beginning or the end of the article. And like many National Geographic articles, there is no author. So it's just been credited to National Geographic. So we need to consider that. So that's when you pick person or organization. The building represents an organization. So you have to select the organization because National Geographic is not an organization. So the title of the page, Competing for Clean Water has led to a crisis. I guess it's changed since I've done it before. But here we go. This is, and then you want to, so it's got the URL here, and then you want the date viewed or date accessed, because sometimes they'll edit the page and you'll get a different name. So I would click today. I might change this. Competing for clean water has led to a crisis. This is not what it's called. This is called a clean water crisis. So I'm going to copy this title and go back to the URL, or go back to this and change that to make it more accurate. All right. So then I'm going to save this, and you've generated your first citation. Great. Again, another pop-up. Once you've done them all the first time, it will again check that you're using APA 7, and then when you're done, you can download it. I'll show you how to do that at the end. Notice it puts it into my Arial font. It's got the hanging indent, and if you click on this, it gives you two different reference styles, citation styles. This is the non-integral citation. This is the integral citation. So click on that to copy it, and then when you go back to your paper, you just insert it within the paper. Okay. So that's the first citation. Again, it is part of the sentence. Before the period is where you put your citation. Okay. It is a critical necessity, yet Naylor and others, 2021, stressed that 1.42 billion people live in areas of high level of vulnerability. 1.42 billion. Okay, so we need to find that information. So that's Naylor. I don't know which one this is. That's not that one. Might be that one. Yeah. No, wait, I gotta, hold on one second. All right, so this is the correct one. It is by UNICEF, which is United Nations, I think it's International Child Education Fund or something like that. But it's a UN source, right? This one, so we were going to copy this URL. This is a PDF, but that's fine. You copy that, you go here, you add citation. So this is probably, you can use website, although you can go here and find a PDF somewhere here, ebook. It might be an ebook, but again, this is not something that you specifically, because it's online, you can use it as a website. If you're using a book, put it there, things like that. So you can choose different sources. If you're getting something from TV, if you're using a thesis or somebody's dissertation, what they're writing to graduate from university, for a master's or a thesis for a master's or a dissertation for a PhD program, you can use it, but use this one. But be cautious with that, because it is not as reliable. So I'm just going to use it as a website. I'm going to put the URL in there and I'm going to search. It finds it. It says it's probably credible. However, it says the report author is UNICEF. I said the author's name was, or the citation was, Naylor. So we need to figure out, why do I have a different one? Because you need to look for an author in everything. So it doesn't say it immediately, but if you scroll to the end of this document, I think here, it says something here somewhere. Yes, this brief was compiled with contributions and support by Kellyanne Naylor and all these other authors. So it does give credit to authors. So rather than just saying it's UNICEF, you need to cite all of these authors. And this means you have to put them in manually. So Kellyanne Naylor, Naylor is the family name. Sylvia Gaia, Gaia is the family name. Fiona Ward, again, Ward is the family name. So to do this properly, you need to enter all of these names manually. So first name was Kellyanne, and then the family name was Naylor, and then add another author. The next author was Sylvia Gaia. So you have to go through each one. And manually input, and you have to do all of them. So I will finish this up and start again. All right, so I've entered all the authors from that. Don't change the order because the first author listed is the lead author. These do not need to be in alphabetical order. They need to maintain the order that they appear, because Naylor, Kellyanne Naylor, is probably the lead author. That means she probably put more work into this this piece of this report than anybody else. So don't change the order. If whoever's listed first should be listed first in your MyBib. Again, make sure this is all people. Sometimes when it's done automatically, some of these will appear as improperly as like an organization. Make sure you list it properly. Oh, now it deleted whoever Salim's name is, Leah Salim. So I got to put that back in there. It's important that you get it all right. So this is the thing. Again, date accessed is today, and the rest of this information I think is okay. Save. Now we've got another list here with all the authors' names. You can look at Naylor et al. In the in-text citation, in the integral, and then a non-integral. But in my essay, it was Naylor et al. So it is an integral citation there. Okay, so that's the second one. All right. Don't worry, they're going to go faster. But we are developing a list here. Again, this site will allow you to do multiple lists, and it keeps trying to point out its advantages. So the next one here is Ende. I don't really know how to say that, but that is, I believe that's this one here. No, that's Tras. Dinar. Oh man. Here we go. So this is our first academic journal. And so this is in an academic setting. You need to be able to get access to the entire thing. You can see this is the image that I put into this essay. So when you're using academic journals, the key here is the DOI number. This is the number you want to copy. And when you're using any of these citation generators, click on New Citation. This is now a journal, and it says Search for the journal article title or DOI. I always go to the DOI first because it usually works better. And then it gets 3 different authors. It says it's credible. It pulls up all the information accurately. But again, you have to check, make sure this is spelled right. And so you can check it with the 3 author names, 1, 2, 3 here, and we check the submission received, it's revised, it's accepted, it was published July 2020. So all this information should be accurate. This is date published July 2020, and then don't click today because that's not when it was published. This you don't need a date accessed because this is published, so it's not going to change. So click save, and notice it puts it first because this is now starting to put it into the correct alphabetical order. So again, you can click on it, choose whichever citation is the one you want to use. Do you want to use it as non-integral or integral? And that will determine which citation or in-text citation you get. Okay, so that's that one. The next one we get is Boretti and Rosa 2019. That is this one. This is another article or journal article. So again, it's got all the information you need here. Copy. This is not a journal article. This is nature.com, but Nature is a trusted source. Again, July 2019. So copy the URL here. Go back here. Add a citation. This one, I think you could say, is a journal, not a journal, but a website because it's nature.com. It's credible. Oh, it does have a DOI. So if you can find the DOI, great. Click on it. Boretti and Rosa. It's got the names properly. They're both people. It's pulled all, usually with DOIs, it works very well. So save that one. There's your reference. Again, it's put it second after A. Now we got B. And then we can go back to the next one, which is the United Nations. This one here. So this is, again, this is not a person, but the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs. I need to pull that one up. So this is the source, but the original source from when I originally wrote this paper and found the source has changed. So I've refound it. It's water and food security. So I'm going to copy this and go back to here and new citation. I'm going to put this in as a URL and search. Here it is. Does it have a report author? So now we got to go and look and see if we can find an author. So there's no author up here, and there's no author. There's no author. Okay. So this is written by the FAO. So this is how we would have to do this. We would say, no, there's no author. Does it have a date published? Let's see. Is there a date? I don't see a date either. Okay, so we need to go back here and say no. So it doesn't come up with anything. So we need to come up with, this is not a person. This is FAO. What does FAO stand for? And so we need to make sure we're putting in all of this information here. And FAO is the Food and Agriculture Organization of the UN. So when we go into creating this, is Food and Agriculture Organization. So that's the organization. Title of the report is not W, Water and Food Security. It's Water and Food Security, so you need to change that. Also, make sure you're capitalizing properly. This is a proper name, so it needs to have proper capitalization. Date published, we don't know. Is it online? We've got the URL there, and that should be enough information. So when we create this citation, it comes up with FAO ND. ND stands for not dated or no date. So if you cannot find a date, that's okay. That's what you need to do. But if I can find a date, you can find a date. All right. So make sure that you are looking at it that way. So this one would be changed from the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs to Food and Agriculture Organization. And then this next one is Dinar and others. So I'll pull that one. This is it. Again, we've got a DOI number. So copy that, add it to your citation. This is a journal. Paste in the URL, the DOI number, search, it comes up. Usually, again, it does this very accurately. Click on it. Does it have an issue number? So now we need to think or find, does it have an issue number? So you need to search around. Okay, volume, December 2019. And we got page range as well, 212 to 226. Volume 23, December 2019. So we need to check. Yes, it does. So issue number would be volume, what was it? 23, December 2019. Volume 23. And then date published December 2019, page range, you got that. Okay, so that was the only information it was missing, volume 23. All right, so put that in there, save that. You get Dinar, Tu, and Hyun. And everything else seems correct. And I think that is almost the last one in this paragraph. Oh, there's one more. World Wildlife Fund. So that is this one, this World Wildlife Fund. So this is about water scarcity. Again, this is a reputable organization, so you can use this. I'm going to copy this, go to a new citation. This is a website, paste the website there, search. It says proceed with caution. Okay, so I'm going to proceed with caution. It does not find an author. All right, so does it have an author? Well, let's check. So again, a lot of times these that are written by organizations do not have authors, but here's some of the information that was used in the paper. And we can scroll down, we can look for an author, but I do not see an author at the end of this paper, at the end of this is a different article. So this one, there's no author given here. So you must search if it doesn't find it automatically. Does it have an author? No. So again, this is an organization, the World Wildlife, is it fund or foundation? WWF. World Wildlife Fund. So make sure you get the name properly. All right. It's got the date published, 2025. I do not think that was published in 2025. Now, can we find a date? Again, if there's no date, that's fine. We can still use this because it is a reputable source. I do not see a date on there. So it's got a copyright of 2025, but that doesn't mean that's when this was published. So click on this and delete that and save. Now it again says World Wildlife Fund ND for not dated. Okay, so this is your reference list. You can use, again, you shouldn't use the integral citation for something like this source. I would use this one, put it at the end. This one you can use as an integral citation because it's got the author's name. Make sure you're picking the right citation for the right reason. So I suggest that you don't write or copy these into your reference list at any point until the end. Then you go up here and you go to download references. I usually just pick copy and paste, but you can try these other ones. I found that they don't always work. Click copy and paste, click to copy, and then when you go to your essay, go to the end of your essay. Don't put URLs, paste. Now, notice it doesn't have the proper hanging indentation. So you need to select all of your references. There's a couple of ways you can format this. You can probably paste it as the original source and it might do it. So that's one way of doing it, but I'm going to show you if you can't get it to paste properly. In Microsoft Word, you can go and use your ruler, which you can turn on the ruler by going to View and click the ruler tab. So you go to ruler, turn it on, you get a ruler. Select all of your sources. There are two little triangles. The top one is what you use for regular indentation. The bottom one, if you pull that over, you need to go in about that far, about 5 letters. If you count 1, 2, 3, 4, it's on the 5th letter. That is approximately the type of indentation you want. Or you can go to Home and Paragraph, and you can go to Special Indentation, left, right, go to Special, and you can go to Hanging Indent. And mine's in inches. I don't know why, because it's probably an American version. And you can click OK on that, and it will also provide that hanging indent. Again, you can boldface your references. You can make that one slightly larger, but this font size should be the same as your font and font size. So I got Calibri 12 through here throughout. Here it should be Calibri 12. So here I got Calibri 12. Okay, so it's the same. That's probably my mistake. You want to take that out. Okay, and that is how you do a proper reference list. Now, I didn't do the whole thing. I'd have to do the entire essay. All of them must be here. Like if I see fountain here, I should see fountain here right after Food and Agriculture Organization. If I see this and there's no matching reference, there's a problem. I'm taking points off of your essay for improperly cited information. I hope this makes referencing clearer. Again, I realize this is a very technical and kind of tedious type of work, but it is very important that you understand how to do this, because this is something that you will do in a lot of your work in the future throughout university and in jobs. If you ever write something, you need to be able to provide proper references and citations. All right, thank you for listening.